Thanks, gentlemen. A much more decisive win there by KaBum that time around. And I think it's more a product of, as Jat and Freak were saying, some comfortability within the team. So it definitely, I mean, I feel as though both teams were playing with a little bit more comfort on that big stage in a high-pressure environment. What are your guys' thoughts?
Also, at the same time, you're feeling out your opponents. You've never played against these guys before as a unit, as a team. And the fact that KaBum, in that first game, we talked about it, that they were able to kind of get these lose these objectives, but still go even because they were winning all the lanes. There, you saw them win team fights early. You saw them get objectives early, and then they just skyrocketed their lead. And their closing out of the game was very convincing as well.
All right, well, now let's look, though, at what PEX has to do. I kind of want to look forward because there's not a ton of analysis to be done on that game as it was a pretty methodical win. So let's look forward into the next match. PEX, where do they make the change? Do they make the change within the team composition, within their play style, strategy? Where do they make the changes, Pobelter?
I feel like they're still jittery, like they have the land jitters, you know. I'm seeing a lot of panic flashes, like an Orianna will ult, and then they'll be extremely low, and then they'll just flash and die anyways. Or a skill shot will be flying towards them, one that wouldn't normally hit, and then they'll panic flash, so you can still see that they're nervous. They have to overcome that and just sort of play aggressively and try and make skirmish plays happen, I feel, because that's what was happening for them game one, and they had a shot at winning in that one. But the second game, they just sort of played into KaBum's hand, and it looked really hopeless for them.
So first step, take a breath. Yeah, I like that. Let's start there. Let's start there with breathing. And then, but Zyrene, what about, how do they build on that, right? Like Pobelter said, let's take some skirmishes. Does that mean catering a team comp that's specifically built to separate out, to say, hey, look, let's not go for these gigantic game-swinging team fights. Let's look for smaller fights?
I'm not 100% sure against a team like KaBum, because KaBum is picking a lot of wave clear in the mid lane with Tinones. I think you have to ban the Orianna and pay some respect to that pick, and then he'll go on something else, maybe more assassin-oriented, we'll have to see. But you also need to pick more wave clear for yourself, because they've gone with Ryze top, Maokai top, they've gone with Ryze mid, and then Yasuo mid, and they lack complete wave clear from their solo laners. So then when their solo laners get behind, they don't leave options to get back into the game and stall it out, which was something that KaBum had in game one available to them. They could stall out, they could wave clear, they could continually just turtle up and wait to be powerful and then have an AoE team fight. But I do think that they do need to rethink their picks and bans and play to their style. That's the big thing. When you are uncomfortable in a LAN setting and it's very obvious, you need to go to your comfort champions. You need to go to your picks. You can see that with kind of Lep in the top lane playing Aurelia. He's actually known as Aurelia in Brazil. People call him that straight up because he is the best Aurelia BR.
And he played it very well. To speak a little bit more towards the Orianna, though, 8-1-11 this game, a fantastic game in the one prior. As you said, maybe they'll pay some respect to it. Interestingly enough, though, the casters commented on it. The fact that he built Liandry's, which is somewhat unorthodox, as early as he built it. And then also the fact that we noticed before finishing his Athenes, he went straight into that needlessly large rod. So, Pobelter, your thoughts as a mid laner, is that just like a super aggressive buy and like, you know, tip the hat to him because I guess it paid off, or are you more a fan of like, I would have played more conservatively in this sense?
You know, I really don't think it mattered what items he built that game because, like, no matter what he built, I feel like they were going to win because of just how much impact he was doing regardless of his items, so how he was positioning the ball. But basically that build, it has a higher power spike when you get the Rod because obviously the Rod is a more impactful purchase than the Codex, but you end up delaying your Grail, and I feel like the cooldown that you get from finishing the Grail earlier with the blue buff is ultimately better. But, you know, that's just my opinion, you know? Maybe he has some different opinion.
Yeah, there was also a really funny part too, where you know, you're like talking about the build being very aggressive, but then his play style wasn't super aggressive either. There was like a 17-18K gold lead, and Pobelter's over here during the game going, just flash ulti them. You're playing so scared. Why are you playing scared?
There was a moment where everybody on PEX's flash was down, so it seemed like a pretty easy engage. We've talked a little bit about KaBum's teamfight prowess, and then the fact that they did have kind of those early spikes in power. I want to jump into the replay that we have 26 minutes into the game around the Baron pit, where they end up taking a 5-for-1 plus Baron off the backside of that. Pobelter, if you don't mind walking us through this one.
All right, roll the clip, please. So this fight actually opens up with the Kha'Zix, Danagorn jumping over the wall. They get a great Ori ult onto two of them, the Yasuo and the Nami. And then Yasuo is exhausted. Nami dies instantly after the Ori ult. From here on, they clean up Yasuo because he wasn't able to kill anyone. And they're all pretty low right here, but they're able to just like team fight with more skill. And then even though they're all low, they're just kiting in and out. balancing damage on each other perfectly. And this ends up being a 5-for-1 wipe as well as Baron.
Well, what's crazy about this, too, is that Jinx wasn't even in the beginning of that fight. You actually see on the mini-map, Jinx is running across the mid lane, eventually gets there, and then, of all things, pops a Youmuu's and runs through the fight with Get Excited. What are you guys' thoughts on a Youmuu's Jinx? Like, that's a pretty interesting buy.
I heard it when it went off in one of the team fights, and I went, wait, who has a Youmuu's? And I saw the Jinx run, and I was like, no way. This guy, oh, I'm a big fan of Minerva already.
Yeah, I mean, I have to respect that purchase. I mean, that's just the move speed that you get out of that is absolutely ridiculous. Get Excited, Youmuu's, and then with the Ori utility for speed, I mean, that's pretty scary if that snowball gets rolling. But I want to now look forward into the next game because we touched on it about what PEX needs to do. Let's actually look at KaBum, right? They are ahead. So what do they need to do to, like, close it out, right? Avoid cheese, not let themselves get overconfident, overly aggressive, because we've seen them in this series. There have been a couple times where they've gotten overly aggressive, even in the first game, and given up some kills. So there's still a possibility that PEX can take an early advantage and run over them.
I think that they're more comfortable now. So I think if they just stick to their comfort champions and keep doing more of the same, like they did in that game too, but close it out a little earlier. But they won the game. You know, you can't hold that against them, regardless of if they had an 18K gold lead or not. The fact they got themselves to that point is a testament to them, and it doesn't really matter in this matchup against PEX. If they make it to Worlds, then you can put it into question and be like, how will they do against other teams if they can't close a game out? But right now, I think what they need to do is just stick with what they're doing. If the Orianna gets banned out, fall back on another champion that does more of the same for their win conditions, because they're playing to them perfectly.
All right. I mean, that sounds pretty fair and square right there.
Yeah, Zyrene sort of said what I was going to say. The Orianna will probably be banned out, so I think if Tin just sticks to some similar control mage like Syndra or Ziggs, then they should not have a difficult time.
All right. Well, we're going to head off the Rift for a little while the teams reset for Game 3 of our international wild card between KaBum eSports and PEX Gaming. Stay with us.
The fight actually now for the mid lane. Uri's going to go to the ulti. The bubble's there as well. Bad Milk probes are freaking on point. Graylo's dead. Bad Milk's suddenly here, by the way. They find Dance. They he gets away from the Soul Shackles. Flashes in, gets the kill. Lep shows up, but is it too little too late? Tinones gets stunned. Back in goes Danagor. Actually pushes the W the wrong way. And Minerva finds the third kill of the fight. Mega JP is going to go down as well. Now it's only the Rise alive, and that is an ace for one. What else can Yuri do here? He's got the ulti. Can he find the engage? He finds Lep. He finds damage from his AD carry, but the shockwave is too much. 38 minutes into the game. Nexus gonna fall, and Brazil is one game away from the World Championship.